I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk. Gotta keep quiet, maneuver in silence to let them in, chalk up their body, another one body, that's just how it go. I got some secrets, I'm shaking the game so they stay on their toes. Stay in your lane, how to stay on the go. I came to play with the pros and act like a rookie, so they overlook me, then I double up again, none of their knows, none of them cold. They just got lucky but never adapted, so I'm to the one if it's coming to blows. My enemies cutting it close, I let them think that they got me, but what do you know? I had them beat before we ever spoke, I'm ready for smoke. I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lloyd Richard Jr., and I am here to introduce you to Startup on the Blocks, Startup Founders Best Practices for October 13th, 2022. Today, I'm going to be joined by Mario McLaughlin. And as soon as he's ready, he'll be popping up here on the stage, and we will be introducing ourselves to him. As you notice, my father, Lloyd Richard Sr., is not on the video today. He's out of town doing some work, but for the time being, I will be here to host and introduce you all to our best practices here at Startup on the Blocks. Of course, we cannot do what we do without our wonderful sponsors. All of those whom you see here on the slideshow, of course, Innisfree Hotels, Florida Power and Light, Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce, Bantucola, our streaming partners, the First Bank, the Small Business Development Center, and Echo Lab, as well as the City of Pensacola. So we want to thank all of our sponsors for making this event possible each and every Thursday for the past 2 years. So it's been an awesome experience, and we can't wait to show you all more to come. So our speaker today, as I've alluded to, is Mario McLaughlin. and he's the CEO of Food Supply. And then next week, we will have Hector Reyes with Coda.io. And you definitely want to tune in next week as well, because that is such a unique platform that is going to revolutionize the startup industry. So that will be something to definitely hear about. Our mindset here, we have a startup playbook, 6 lessons learned from Silicon Valley, and self-acceleration. The goal is always to go into from an individual mindset to the whole ecosystem. And we are in that light blue area there that says skills and practices. We want to empower each of our founders to have skills and practices that will lead them into successful startups and throughout the startup ecosystem. As many of you know, we have a Lean Stack Accelerator already happening, and we have so many participants that we are having to group them up now because we only can have 10. So we have a few people being grouped up together. But right now, where we are in that foundations model is in that orange level right here, that demand generation, where we're going to build a minimal viable product that can be ready for market. So for those of you who are participating in the accelerator program, that's the space where we're going to be. And it's exciting because we're going to be in that place where we should be able to have a viable business model that we can send out to venture capitalists and to investors that are interested in funding us. And we will have a solid business and a plan to make that happen through the validation framework. Now, some ideas that help us get started and some things, if this is your first time thinking about having a startup, you want to look at our playbook. The Founders Playbook are about 5 or 6 websites here that you can go to find out what the mindset is. Listen, everything happens just by simply reading, watching a few videos. You can begin to start building your startup. I feel like a lot of times when I talk to other founders, there's like a little fog at the beginning stage, but that's not where we want to be. And it's simply fixed by us making sure that we do a little bit of reading or watching some videos. And so this startup founders playbook actually helps us do that. It helps you find out, what should I be looking at first? The lean startup methodology. What is that? You can go there and look that up. Now, Lloyd Sr. has been talking about that ad nauseum practically since he's been on. So I can imagine that you've heard it from him in many different ways. But the idea about the startup industry is that you can now empower yourself to make the money that you want to make and create ideas that will revolutionize our economy and hopefully the world eventually. The other thing that we want to look at here with the startup playbook, F6S, if you don't have a profile on F6S and you have a startup, you need to have a profile because there's so many free accessible services that are available from all sorts of companies, including Amazon and Google, that will assist your startup. Now, you probably want to make sure that you are incorporated or you are LLC at least to make sure you can get that. But definitely there are things that'll even help you get started with that. So F6S is definitely one I would personally recommend. Now, this is kind of what it looks like. This graphic is just to help you to see where Startup on the Blocks fits. You have your idea there to the left, what you're thinking about doing, all the way until getting into pitch competitions, getting into accelerator programs, and of course, getting into other programs that allow, like G Alpha, G Beta, that will help start getting you capital. Going through some of those programs will literally get you capital to start your minimal viable product and your startup. Now, I want to just highlight some of these amazing people that you see on the screen today. We can just give a shout out in the comments to Tia Robbins, Sandra Donaldson, Cameron Howard, Carlos Kyles, Quinn Bro, Troy Watts, Crystal Smith, Elijah Rigsby, Gregory Lashley, and Sabina Zunguze. And all of them are part of our Founders of Color launch program, which is our accelerator that we are currently in. We're about in week 2, going into week 3. And there's so much to experience. So we hopefully will hear from a lot more of them as time goes on. They're also going to be our team leaders. So some other people are part of it as well, Mario being one of them. And so he'll be working with Sabina there below. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in his interview shortly. And then again, the framework again to see what that looks like. Let's just kind of dive in a little bit to see where they're at. So I said we're about going to week 3. So here we're about to start up in the sprint. We're going to do one sprint here to kind of figure out what the problem is that we need to solve and kind of build some solutions towards that. So it's exciting. This is kind of, I feel like I'm on ESPN giving you the play-by-play, but this is kind of where we're at. And we will look at some, I'm going to share my screen a little bit to show a little bit inside Lean Stack to see what that kind of looks like, because I'm really excited to share with some of you about that. Here's what the training format looks like. There are 5 stages there. So we're currently in stage 1 with those classes that we're trying to do there, those 5 classes. And then demand generation will be the next phase that we'll go through as well. You see some of those classes there. That being said, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and stop yapping along and see if Mario's ready to come on screen to have a little conversation about food supply. All right, we're waiting just one more moment to see if Mario's up on his screen here. Okay. All righty. So we have you on the screen. We probably can hear you, but we can't see you yet, Mario. You might want to change that.
Okay.
Check
Yeah,
your. There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm pretty excited.
I did all that rambling. I was like, "Where's he at on the back?" So hearing me kind of talk about what we're doing with Startup on the Blocks, you've heard some of that from my father before. Yeah. Anything kind of pique your interest in my conversation, that short introduction?
Well, I think, the whole thing, the whole process always intrigues me because, I've been an accelerator before, and, everybody has their own way of doing things. So it's always exciting to see like how everybody does it, right? And to spot the differences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think it's time for us to kind of just get to know you a little bit while you're on the show today. What are you going to be talking to us about? So I know we talked a little bit before we came on camera about food supply and kind of where you are. And you are actually a part of our accelerator program. So we're definitely going to want to pick your brain about that. But just give us some indication about who you are, where you're from, and what is your startup that you're working on, and why are you so passionate about it? Why don't we start there?
All right, that's perfect. Okay. So my name is Mario McLaughlin. I am originally from Jamaica. I came here when I was a baby. I went to George Brown College here in Toronto, Ontario for business administration for advanced diploma. And right after I finished, I went into the military. So I'm a reservist. Well, I was a reservist. So I spent 4 years there. And I got into cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I actually went to school to become an entrepreneur and kind of just learn about business administration, business development. Um, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so my dad he has his own bricklaying company. At one point, my mother, she was selling clothes. Like she had her own stall where she sell clothes at like flea markets. My brother, he's really, big into Christianity and stuff. So he created a website. Sold the website and moved out the house and everything. Um, One of my other brothers, he does logistics supply chain, so he was moving furniture. He started his own furniture company. And he was making good money. I mean, it wasn't. I'm like, it wasn't like the prettiest job, but like he was making a killing. So that's kind of me with regards to like entrepreneurship. But yeah, I finished school. I went to the military, and then I had my own. I started a startup with friends. It blew up, like it blew up pretty badly. But I took what I learned from that, and one of my co-founders and I, we went off and we got into like wearable technology and hardware, and I learned a lot about hardware from him. And I was in wearable tech. I had an electrical engineer I was working with. We were trying to develop some fashion with electronic textiles. Um, so it was pretty cool. I was very excited about it. Unfortunately, our electrical engineer, he wanted a full time job, and I could not provide full time pay.
Mm.
So I moved on, and I started researching on like finance and investing. Like I'm not a natural finance guy. Like I took economics. I took finance in school, but like it's still not really my major. So I had to do a lot of research, and I had another friend where we started a company called You Propose, and the whole thing was called You Propose Sustainable Investing. So essentially, you could go on the platform, propose a sustainable investing, a sustainable, idea, like a construction or
Mm.
project idea, and you know, these companies, the construction companies, engineering companies, would essentially have to, kind of fight to work on it, right? So they would
Mm.
essentially apply to develop the project,
Yeah.
right? And I'm gonna say honestly say we went very far in it, to the point where we had a very good team. Like it was, we had a distributed systems engineer on our team. We had a chief compliance officer. I mean, it was really good, and we were gonna launch it in 2017 as a digital token, and I didn't pull the trigger on it, right? That's what it really came down to. Our compliance officer, he was definitely not about it because he was working at a publicly traded company, so it would have been like a conflict of interest.
Mm.
And but I think he still wanted it like secretly to do it, but he just didn't want to say it, right?
Mm.
Um, so I didn't end up doing it. I didn't end up launching it. I got myself into a little bit of legal trouble, so I said, you know what, I pretty good. I can build another concept because it took me a while to build it, and that's about probably at the end of 2018, which was
Mm.
like there was a big crypto bull run going on that time for raising capital. I'm like, what was I thinking, right?
Yeah.
So right after that, I began creating a real estate platform called Denori, and essentially it was fractional real estate investing on the blockchain. Very early, like
Wow.
2018, and I'm gonna say honestly, I didn't have the skill set really to find the right co-founder, because my previous co-founder for YouPropose, he was in finance, and he's like, oh, this blockchain, this cryptocurrency stuff is not going anywhere. So so I just pivoted everything, pivoted entire platform,
Mm.
to that to the real estate, and it was very hard to find someone in finance because I'm not a real estate guy, but I
Hmm.
can research everything.
Yeah.
So I'm very good at like researching and just finding key information that I need to build it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I did. That's why I built the business model, I built the white paper.
Okay.
I got a developer on Craigslist, and
Wow.
we built it. Then we were building it, and we got into a bunch of accelerators. So
Yeah.
I applied on F6S. I must have got into like 3 or 4 accelerators that year. One in Europe, which was really good.
Yeah.
um, and I didn't take it. I got into another one in Zambia. I got into one in Zambia,
Okay.
Lusaka, Zambia, and I took that one. And it was called Bongo Hive, and it was all right. We actually had the opportunity to meet Prince Harry,
Wow.
the Duke
Okay.
of I think it's the Duke of Wessex, I think, or Westminster. I don't quote me.
Westminster. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them. And so actually had the opportunity to meet him if I just flew down there, right? And yeah, it definitely didn't happen. I ran out of money just prior to it, like,
Mm.
and our co-founder, we both ran out of money, and he's like, man, I can't work on this anymore, right?
Yeah,
And I'm like, man, we got 3 weeks till we have to demo,
yeah.
right? So the whole program was wrapping up, and we had opportunity to demo. We didn't have our prototype ready, so
Wow.
we couldn't take advantage of it, right?
So
And
that's an interesting thing that you're bringing
yeah,
up is so you have experience going through these accelerators. You've
yeah,
been pushing forward and you have that kind of go get 'em mentality already
yeah,
for business and entrepreneurship because you're raised around it. You were
yeah,
saying your family is all entrepreneurs. You have a background in entrepreneurship and business administration. So those things are really clear to you.
yeah,
But along the way, even in an accelerator, you can run out of those funds,
yeah,
run out of those things in the middle of that. Um, and so that's been something that it sounds like in this previous startup that happened. And
yeah,
then now, as we go into what you're currently working on with food supply,
yeah.
there's something similar has kind of happened in not exactly in the same way, but something
Mhm.
similar has happened. And so I think we definitely want to dive into what you're doing right now with food
Oh yeah,
supply and
yeah,
then dive into what's working for you and then we'll get into the lean stack stuff a little bit later. So tell
yeah,
us a little bit about food supply and your startup and what you're doing with that. And if you want, I think you had a slideshow that you wanted to share
yeah.
as well.
So should I show the slide first, or should I just like
Sure,
talk?
yeah, absolutely. If
Okay.
yeah, I think that'd be great. I will say in full disclosure, I said we're not doing pitches right now. I'm not going to
Yeah,
have him give a pitch right now. I'm just talking about what he's doing, and I loved your history because it really gives some perspective for our viewers about you've been trying to do startups. This is not the first go around as you start
yeah,
talking about it.
definitely not.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring you up here and I'm going to let you talk a little bit. I'll move myself out the way and kind of let you talk, and I'll come back on a little bit later.
Okay, perfect. So this is our startup called Food Supply. We're feeding the future. So our vision is to create a frictionless food supply chain marketplace that essentially brings together all parties in the agri-food value chain. And our market is sub-Saharan Africa, which has a 1.2 billion people, and that's actually expected to double by 2050. A country like Sierra Leone, where 70% of businesses are in agriculture, and the mobile money, according to a GSMA report, is in terms of volume is 23.8 billion in 2019, and the emergence of the African free trade area valued at 3 trillion US. Right, and the problem we're solving is there is food security challenges because of the pandemic. So a bunch of supply chains got destroyed, and now we kind of have to rebuild it. If you look at Ukraine, you can see that it's kind of you know caused the whole world food price to increase, right? So that's definitely been a factor. In terms of partners and trusting them, a lot of farmers have told me that when they have to buy their farm inputs, the inputs are intentionally labeled wrong, right? So they're buying stuff that they're not supposed to be buying, and that looks like fertilizer, it looks like seeds, intentionally, done wrong just to make a quick buck, right? So farmers lose out on that when they're transporting their produce to the market. The person who's supposed to do the delivery doesn't show up, causing the farmer have to, repackaging it and bring it themselves. So that's the big challenge. And in terms of gaining fair market value for produce, um, most farmers typically have to deal with a wholesaler or middleman who makes most of the money in the deal. The farmer doesn't. A lot of times, the farmer doesn't even want to know how to do what the wholesaler is doing. They just want to know that once their crops is fully grown and reach maturity, that they have a buyer at the end of the day, right? That's what they really want. And lastly, about 80% of the food waste, it happens in the early stages of the value chain. So that's typically once the farmer is ready to harvest his crop, there's mismanagement going on in harvesting. And I've harvested crops, and it can be tricky when you're harvesting. And they also have something called post harvest loss, where they don't have the storage capabilities to actually store the produce. So and here in the Western world, 60% of the food waste happens at the later stages of the value chain. So like once it hits the supermarket, that's it's going to waste after that. So our solution is simple. We create community-based agriculture that focuses on transparency and reputation. Farmers can sell direct, reduce bottlenecks, and increase overall efficiency. We'll be able to track and trace the source of food items from farm to fork, and make sure it gets delivered directly to your home, safe place, or distribution center. And I guess this is tracks and validation. I don't really mean to go this far, but we built a pipeline in about a week of 250 farmers by forming a partnership with one. I'm a part of 30 Facebook farmer group. I did a pipeline of 800 just by Googling. These are just some of the accelerators that I previously was a part of, like Bongo Hive, Global Startup Ecosystem, Startup Canada, Tech Tribe Accelerator, which is the Tech Tribe Accelerator is based in South Africa, and it's very good. Honestly, it helped me tremendously, and it culminates with the South Africa Innovation Summit. So I think I guess I'll stop there.
No, that's
Right?
great, man. That was great.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving a lot of that history and background of what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I love to hear from our audience as what they've kind of learned as well in the chat. So definitely be posting in the chat about that. But I think I kind of want to dive in about food supply because this is so interesting to me, the scenario of what you're trying to solve. But I think there's some key things that we want to pick out initially. So first, you're trying to work with sub-Saharan African farmers. So this is not a Western-based. But this is not your target market is not Western-based.
Mhm.
It's for sub-Saharan Africans. Ultimately, is that what we're hearing from your presentation?
Well, it works here, like it works over here, but it
Mhm.
just works better over
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's just an organizational thing.
Hmm. And I think we would be curious to know, like, if there's so much so many blocks along the food supply chain, if
Hmm.
there's so many things that are happening before it even gets to the end of the supply chain, like you had mentioned toward the
Hmm.
latter part, I'm curious as to how your application, I'm assuming this is a phone application that
Yeah,
you're
you call
using.
it a decentralized application.
Decentralized application.
Yeah.
So explain that for those of us who don't quite
Oh.
understand your lingo.
Oh.
Decentralized. Listen, you've been in blockchain and and cryptocurrency. You're gonna have to speak it simply for us people who are not a part of that. So, decentralized application. What is that?
So it's the whole concept of decentralization is about removing power away from a centralized authority. With regards to the blockchain, though, um, you know, we're kind of empowering users, and we're helping them. Um, Essentially, we're reducing or eliminating the middleman, right?
Mm,
So the banker, the broker, the lawyer, we remove them. Like they kind of get removed, and then the government gets removed, but they get empowered. So um, when I say empowerment, uh, they're gonna be more efficient and
okay.
more accurate, but they're gonna have kind of less power.
So I
Um,
think this is going to kind of answer the question that I'm kind of leaning towards.
okay.
Sabina, your team partner, she might be throwing you under the bus, but no, but Sabina has a question for you. How exactly are you connecting the farmers beyond them selling at markets?
So how exactly am I connecting the farmers beyond selling at the market? Okay, so it's community based agriculture. So the reason why I did community was because um it's most farmers there are smallholder farmers, and of these smallholder farmers, I believe it's like um two I think 2 to 10 acres, I believe, something like that. But they just do small scale farming, right?
Mhm.
And most of them they won't have access to credit. Most of them don't have enough money to buy the equipment they need. It's just they're kind of just stuck, and they don't know how to export, which is the biggest thing. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know what's going on over there, but they just don't know how to export for whatever reason. And because of that, easier for them to form a community. And when they want to borrow a loan, they can do it on a community-based level. When they want to buy asset, they can buy a group asset, a community-based asset that serves all of them. And then when they want to sell direct to market, it's much easier because it's transparent. The platform's there, and they can advertise much easier, right?
Yeah.
So it's just all about empowering the farmer, right? Because individually they don't really stand a chance.
Well, I love that you're talking about that empowerment, and we definitely want to bring that in. I think decentralization in cryptocurrency is an
Yeah.
important aspect of what makes cryptocurrency so powerful.
Hmm.
But in regards to something as a staple like agriculture and food,
Hmm.
but I think and I could be wrong with this, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is who has the application as a sub-Saharan African farmer to get on this. So how
Hmm.
are they getting to your
Hmm.
decentralized hub to be able to do this? Now I saw that you had WhatsApp, for example, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think in
yeah,
my mind, I'm like, do they all have cell phones? And like,
yeah,
what are we using like to get
yeah,
on here? And I'm not saying that in a way
yeah.
that I've been to Africa, I've been to Djibouti specifically,
Wow.
so I've been to sub-Saharan Africa, and so having that understanding of like how many people have access to this, would farmers have access to this, or would they have to go somewhere to get access
Hmm.
to be a part of this group? What does that look like, and have you dived into that at all?
Yeah, that was a big challenge. Actually get asked that a lot, and
Mhm.
what we've come up with is the whole platform is kind of like Facebook, but it's just like if you use Facebook groups, like if you ever gone and joined a
Yeah.
group in Facebook, you know that the group has administrators. All we've done is we've made those administrators transparent, more transparent, and reputation based. So suppose they want to now sign off and say, "I want to buy a tractor. It's $100,000." You know, when they do that transaction, they get signed off. Everybody knows it's very transparent,
Mm.
right? And they will not be able to just do that, right? Because there's voting, there's
Mhm.
elections, in the community-based elections. So in order for somebody to be in administration, like they obviously have to kind of be like elected for that to
Yeah.
happen, right? Or it depends how they start the group. But that's kind of how it works. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and so
Right?
yeah, and that does come up a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I don't think I answered it. So
yeah, so I was
sorry.
gonna
So
say, what it was,
yeah,
what vehicle are they using for
yeah.
that?
So what we did is like essentially we thought about is like having because a lot of the older people, they're not very tech savvy. So we thought about like using younger kids, the youth, to get them involved in
Mhm.
that communication process, because they can go back and forth, they can use smart devices. And while our consensus, basically meaning the the I guess how the communication information is going to flow
Mm.
is probably not true decentralization, right? Because there's just not enough tech for that to happen. So
Yeah.
we can only do what is best, right? And
Yeah.
and that could even be like maybe someone has to go to something like a little store just to do the transaction, but it can be done. It's just it won't be done like how it would be in the Western world, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of logistics of getting into the market, the community can create agreements with other groups on the platform.
Mhm.
So you could join the platform and be a boda driver. You could, one of those motorcycle delivery guys they have in
Yeah.
Uganda, right? And you could make an agreement with a group of them to facilitate your transaction, and it's reputation based. So
Mm.
if you're not doing, if you're, trying to cheat the system, if you're, not delivering your produce on time,
Mhm.
you're messing up, it'll affect you. It'll affect your group. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's costly, right?
Yeah.
When it's just like that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we've definitely seen that in
Yeah,
reputation-based programs in the
yeah,
U.S. With like Airbnb and
yeah,
Uber and things
yes.
of that nature.
And I have another strategy. but
Okay.
it's not ready. I have one more. I have one more. It's not. I just haven't like really told anybody about it.
Yeah. And so I think as you're looking at that, we have to see from the very beginning of if how that's going to look. And the thing that I kind of hear, and Sabina, thank you so much for your question. Um, how I think where we're diving in a little bit more in detail with Sabina's question and kind of with my question too
Mm-hmm.
is how do we understand, because I hear this decentralization and we
Yeah.
don't want to do it. I almost hear a passive, we don't want to do it the way the West is doing it, kind
Yeah.
of a narrative that I hear. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just going to transparency. So I hear that, but I think for even those who have not been delved into this technology and into the level of detail as
Mm-hmm.
you or my father or something like that, I think there's always some trepidation and fear about
Yeah.
doing something community based. Like
Yeah.
how does a local farmer in in sub-Saharan Africa feel confident that this community-based farming is going to be the way if they know that the supplies that they're still getting are mislabeled, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
or like how are they going to build some sort of fidelity
Mm-hmm.
in the decentralized process? Do you-
That's a very good that's actually a very good question. Um I guess like the best thing I could say is that when farmers join it, right? Again, it's all about community and
Mhm.
it's all about reputation. So, the benefits of that is again, if they join the community, they can gain access to like credit, they gain access to easier life. They can actually move up in society because, they can't, most of them, it's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
They can sell their produce at real world prices as opposed to, dealing with the wholesaler middleman. In terms of governance, the government, because the platform's transparent, the government can easily uh, investigate individual transactions. Um, and they can track and trace it. So those are the kind of things that we implement through the farmer. Um, what we're looking at doing is like if a bank wants to use our platform, they could essentially use it to loan to the farmers as well, right?
Yeah.
So there's many ways of I guess interacting with the platform
Hmm.
for a farmer or third party.
Yeah.
It's really just to see what you're trying to do, and we've really gone towards the gamification aspect,
Hmm.
so that it's kind of like you are what you eat, as opposed to you just do whatever you want. So like if you're a farmer, you're selling produce, you continually sell it, like you'll get badges. I
Mm.
guess it'll be like a I don't want to use any more cryptocurrency terms, but it'll be like a badge, right? So people will know that okay, this is like a level 3 seller. He's been doing this
Mm.
for a while. Just to
Yeah,
let people know.
because those are helpful. When I think I just Airbnb comes to mind because they
Yeah,
have like the super host. So it's
yeah,
like if I'm gonna that person has that kind of thing, I
yeah.
feel like I feel more confident with that
Hmm.
person. And so and I'm curious, and I posted my father's comment because I guess he's sneaking online here in his meeting. So he says, "Congratulations to you and Sabina for participating in the Founders of Color program." So I wanted to just
Yeah.
post that out there, giving you a little shout out. So that being said, I kind of want to dive into now a little bit more about your startup a little bit. So you had talked about in the past that
Hmm.
you've come up a couple of times with no ability. You run out, either you or your co-founders or someone on your team runs out of the money to be able to continue the building of your product in the past. And give us a little history about that with what you're currently working on with food supply as well. Can you hear me, Mario?
So no, sorry. Could you say that again?
Yeah, no worries, no worries. It went out for a
Yeah,
second.
I missed you.
Yeah, it froze just for a brief second. So I was saying you about your past that you had talked about that you all have run out of capital and other startups that you've worked on.
Oh
Now
my
in
goodness.
food supply, how has that been going, and what has been your experience with capital within food supply?
With the raising capital for food supply, you said?
Yeah, for food supply, yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, it's been pretty good, honestly. It's been pretty good. I just turned down a lot of people.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to work with the United Nation. I think it's UNDP, I believe, something like that.
Okay.
I turned it down. I had the opportunity to work with USA Aid, and you know, it was a good offer. Like honestly, I wanted to go with them, but like it just the place where I was trying to launch. There's kind of like a political situation with like the U.S. and that African country, and I was aware of it, so
Mm.
I kind of didn't want to be like a political pawn in it
Mm.
because because I know I get well, I don't know, but I have an idea, I guess.
Mm.
Um, and I've gotten into I say like two accelerators. I know I had opportunity to work with an accelerator. I would have got into been able to work with Impossible Foods.
Okay.
Um, I can't remember the name of it, but I turned it down. I turned it down.
So
Right?
I'm just going to say this because you've been giving us your history. I'm hearing a lot of turning down things that have happened in your startup history.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to where that comes from you. So like you see a problem and then you backtrack, or do you see a problem and say like I want to fix this but I don't have the time? What is happening when you're turning down some of these potentially lucrative? US aid is a huge offer. The UN is a huge offer. So, like, for you to turn it down, I'm curious as to why you wouldn't take those next steps. And why don't you give us kind of some background with that? This-
Well, to be honest with you,
yeah.
it's very it definitely is. I looked at the USA deal and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like everything I dream of. Like hotel, there's transportation's paid for, and I just had a vision of what I wanted, and the biggest thing it just came down to branding. Honestly, I just I just figured if I work at USA Aid or the United Nations, like my branding would have to change, the business model would have to change. I know I would lose creative control over it. I know
Mm.
a lot of people are like the money, the money, the money. Excuse me, and you're right. you're, you're 100. I'm absolutely crazy for taking that, not taking it, right? But
No, 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 no.
you
Okay,
know,
I don't want to say it in that way
yeah,
because everyone has a reason for making the choices that they make.
yeah,
But my thing when I hear that is that I'm like, maybe you feel not secure about some of the aspects of how your side is to feel confident to go into some of those negotiations and to feel
yeah,
confident that you can keep the power that you want if you do want still creative control once you have a partnership with USA or something like that. And
yeah.
so I don't hear that and say necessarily like, oh, they just weren't good enough. That's not what I
No,
hear.
they're definitely good enough.
I hear is that like, well, I don't feel fully confident in knowing what my power is in this situation.
Yeah,
And I think that's the part that we address at Kukua Institute and Startup on the Blocks is because when we start with the best practices, like we're talking about every Thursday here,
hmm,
part of what my father is trying to do is say like you see all the details, don't go for the big parts that you have a degree in business management, you know how to hustle, that's your family, for your family, and no, you know how to get out there and make that money if you got to make that money, right? But now we want to see how we can set up for a larger success, and for a larger success to partner with something like USAID or UN, you got to know those details because you get up there and you're like, I know how to make a little brand. See, I made my slideshow right here. You see, I know how to use Adobe. I know what I'm doing here. But then when USAID is like, okay, so we need this and this and this and this and this, and then we're
yeah,
gonna need this. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I need to I need to go on Fiverr.com and get me a graphic designer real quick. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. You know, you know. I actually, let me tell you, it's not as hard because like
Hmm.
I made the business model.
Yeah.
I made all the documentation, so like when I apply for them, like I don't have to really redo anything.
Hmm.
I just have to copy and paste most of it.
Yeah.
Um, I
But
think
is
what
that
it
business model validated? Do you know that it'll work?
Um, I have there's competitors. So
Mhm.
I have very solid idea that well, I know they're doing something similar
Mm.
with that regard because um it would be it would be too expensive to kind of track and trace each individual farmer,
Yeah, of
because
course.
it would work here in Canada. It would work. You
Yeah,
could do it because they have their own commercial farming agriculture system.
yeah.
But over there, it's just the supply
Yeah.
chains are very different.
And
So,
and so
yeah.
and I totally hear that. And so what we have to start with in this accelerator, for example, is we have to start to make sure that we can say sub-Saharan farmer A, sub-Saharan farmer B can get to our
Mhm.
platform to begin joining this community by doing this, 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 and this. We know
Mhm.
this will work because we have seen this model happen with the
Yeah.
Gates Foundation and building
Yeah.
having phones for every person, and
Yes. Yes.
you see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And
Um.
so you want to be
mhm.
able to have some sort of validation toward that model,
Yeah.
and what those numbers can kind of look like. So one of the things that we use in the lean stack is a traction map, and that traction map, once you create your lean canvas
Mhm.
and you put your idea in there, then you start putting in the numbers. Like you have 800 people that you met on WhatsApp, and of that 800 farmers that you've connected with, and do you know generally what they're bringing to a market at any given time during a harvest season? How much money are they generally making? And
Mhm.
from that, you can begin to build projections that'll show you how well your model for your startup will work.
Mhm.
So, a couple of things that we want to kind of look at is we got to make sure that the funnel for our prospective customers is clear, and it's A, B, C, D. I break it down Barney style. We used to say in the military, break it down
Yeah.
real simple, right?
Yeah.
So people know how to get through it. Then the second aspect of being in a startup is making sure that your actual startup is is a product, is
Yeah.
sellable. And
Mhm.
so if upon listening to your conversation, upon listening to your elevator pitch, investor can't hear how they're going to make money off of it,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how inspiring it will sound. I
Mhm.
want to inspire the sub-Saharan people to have their own decentralized farming and all this other wonderful things too. I want them to have that, but it has to be a workable, doable plan that is
Yeah.
scalable. And the other thing, we had a guy on 2 weeks, I want to say 2, 3 weeks ago, talking about his version of their accelerator programs and their business startup methodology that they're working on.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he was saying was, really, if you can't sell, if you can't sell your startup, then it's not really going to generate any capital. It's not going to generate that investment.
You know.
The startup is just the venue to build your idea. You
Mhm.
want that startup to now be able to be sold. If you don't want to sell it right away, like you want to have some creative control over it, you can definitely do that. You
Yeah.
can negotiate creative control, but sell the startup.
Yeah.
So he called that exit strategy. What will
Mhm.
be your exit strategy at the end of food supply? You know, and nobody, and I said it on the interview, I said, nobody is talking about exit strategy. They're always talking about, like, how do I get in the thing? But
Yeah.
he's already talking, even at the beginning, is what is your exit strategy to make this a success? You know? And so did you in your other then food supply or in your other startups, did you ever look at that exit strategy? Did that come into play with you and your teammates in some of your other experiences?
All the time. We always talk about exit strategy. Because it's just something with business. Like they always talk about, you have to have an exit strategy.
Mm,
And I definitely came up with exit strategy, but like I don't know how realistic it is.
mm,
That's the only thing because I just don't have enough experience. So
mm,
um, that was kind of it. But we always talk about. I try to envision it. Like if somebody in like an African country was to buy out my startup, does that mean that my capital is stuck in that country? Like,
mm.
or do I have to sell it in Canada, do the deal in Canada, and then make that would make life easier, right? So it's like kind of things like that I thought of, but
Yeah.
I really honestly don't have enough experience.
Yeah, let's see what Sabina is saying here. She said the challenge with Africa is that each community within a country is so different, so your model may need to be very specific to be successful. So, what do you think about that comment? What she's saying based on her experience with Africa?
I think it's definitely accurate. The only thing is like you can make your own community, right? So, you're gonna have that decision of I guess like who you're gonna want to work with, right? But
Hmm.
if obviously if the people around you don't like them, I don't know how it's gonna how you're gonna be able to collaborate,
Hmm.
right? So that's kind of the what I thought about it. But I took the model. I really didn't reinvent the wheel. There
Hmm.
are already community-based agriculture um, organizations out there already.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just kind of just added that this, the blockchain
I
aspect.
was trying to think as you were speaking because I used to work in some churches in South Florida, and one of them was a part of a nonprofit organization that literally sold African goods at regular market value here, and they would
Wow,
give that money directly back to those who made it. And
wow,
if I can remember the organization, I will definitely place it in the chat. But it was a really powerful thing, just because now these women making the baskets that they were selling or the
yeah,
jewelry and stuff like that, instead of getting like 2 Djiboutian francs or something for something
yeah,
like that, they actually can get 60 American dollars, which is going
yeah.
to be
That's massive.
literally exactly what that money will do to
Hmm.
that man or woman will change the course of their family, and so in that same way, if you're going to decentralize this their ability to be a part of market and to be able to sell in a different way, there has to be some spaces where they say like, hey, yeah, somebody will come pick up our fruit and we can trust that they're going to come pick up our harvest and pay us for what that is correctly.
Hmm.
And so that's going to have to definitely be worked out for sure.
Hmm.
And so one of the thing, there's just so many. I want to kind of get into a little bit before we go, and I start going into lean time, lean stack a little bit. I want to get into a little bit of what do you feel over the course of your history with startups, and finding co-founders, finding other team members to work with you on startups. What have been the pros and what have been the challenges? I would love for you to speak about that.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
Maybe take
so
a deep breath or two before you start.
oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, so the pros. Yeah, I start with the pros. Okay, so the pros, you know, you you never know. Okay, you never know where you're gonna meet somebody. Like I one time I met somebody at the gym, and he's a very cool person. Um, and I ended up being his co-founder for a while. But so that's good. I mean, you can meet them anywhere.
Hmm.
I guess one of the good pros is that you know as long as they're talented, they're cool people. I find like it really depends on your nature.
Hmm.
So if you like whatever type of personality you are, it's definitely easier to work with somebody who's very similar to you,
Hmm.
has the same vision. Maybe it's the same industry. Maybe they're looking to get an industry. Maybe they're looking to learn more. Um, for me, working with developers is it's a bit easier because I technically don't have to work with them for a very long time. Like I can put it off for a lot longer
Uh,
because I can do wireframing, I can do business modeling, and I can do pretty much everything but code.
mm,
Not design. So it makes things a lot easier.
mm.
When I do approach a developer, they don't really have to do too much work, right? So they do like that, but yeah. So I guess that's pretty good. A lot of them are talented, and they're not really um, they're not really monetary. It really depends. I don't really know how to say pros. Like
Yeah.
they're just
Well,
it depends on who the
what's
person is,
been the
right?
benefit for you? Like, how you're speaking about developers, but you said at some time you've had a chief technical officer, you've had a chief financial officer. What has been the pros working with those people? Because a lot of, and
yeah,
I'm bringing this up just so you know, Mario, I'm bringing this
yeah,
up because a lot of people in our cohorts, a lot of our founders don't have a team or a team member or a
okay,
co-founder, and so how are you finding them and how are you connecting with them is a big part of that. So this is not a grill about it.
yeah,
It's more so
yeah.
like we want to hear what it is that you're doing that's been successful and that's been challenging in that process.
Um, honestly, I never used to be good at it. Like I used to really struggle with it,
Hmm.
and I just whatever I don't know what happened. I guess I just kept doing it, and then I realized, you know, um, what's the best way to do it, and it actually happened when COVID happened.
Mm.
When COVID happened, I couldn't meet anybody in person, and what I would do, I would go and meet them downtown. I'd send out an email and set an appointment. We go and meet at a tech hub that we have down here downtown in Toronto,
Okay.
and we would go and meet. And then COVID happened, and it just became so easy. Like it just, it's a lot easier to do it now. Now I don't have to go downtown. I can do it from my room.
Yeah.
With the developers, because they're so tech savvy, like it works perfect for them. They love it.
Yeah.
I love it, and I can kind of get a better glimpse of their skill set, and I can just get to know them before if I want to meet them in person, right?
Yeah.
But most of them have been pretty cool people. I think the only thing with developers is I guess this is going on to like the bad thing is that they're they they're too sometimes a lot of times what I find with them is that they're definitely very tech savvy, but you know they're just numbers driven.
Mm.
They're just so used to communicating with a computer a lot
Mm.
of times that it's like they think like a computer sometimes, right? I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. It's like sometimes they think like a computer, right? And
Yeah.
when it comes to like business decisions that like it's so sophisticated, it's hard to quantify it sometimes.
Yeah.
Qualify it, and you know, sometimes they don't make rash decisions. They don't make the right decision because it's like they're basing it off solely off probability. Like
Mm.
this is not something where you can use probability efficiently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like we had I had one of my co-founders um like I was saying, if we are working on a Denori and we had like a pitch
Mhm.
demo day, and he didn't want to do the demo day because he didn't believe that it would have went anywhere. And we were about to meet with the investors, right? So I'm like,
You're like, you need to have something working
right?
regardless of whether you believe it works or not, because we
Yeah,
have to demo.
right. Well, his idea is like this is not going to work. The odds of this is it's not realistic, right? And I've definitely experienced that a lot because
Mm.
it's even though I know what I'm doing, like one thing with developers that I find they always want to get paid. I
Mhm.
find a couple of them that they want to do it, but most of them they usually want to get paid, which I don't really like because most of the work is done. Like
Yeah.
I when I say I do most of the work, like I prefer I mostly tell people just sit on the sidelines. I'll do most of the work, and when I'm ready, then you guys just come on board
Yeah.
and do it.
Well, I think, too, when you're going to go into business with someone, what type are you drawing up agreements with your co-founders that where they feel like they understand clearly like the work that they're going to do or the investment
Yeah,
that they're going to make from the beginning, so there's a mutual respect and understanding in the workplace, or have you found
yeah,
that there's not always an agreement and then it gets like, oh, he's not
yeah.
going to pay me, or oh, what's been your experience in the past?
It's never really been like they don't think I'm gonna pay them. Like they're
Mm.
always like I always pay them, right? So
Mm.
that's not. It's just you know, with developers, I believe like in order to get their respect, like you need a senior developer,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't code, so like they'll never respect me,
Mm.
right? It's just that's kind of how it is, right? It's like I can't code, so it's like
So you have to
um
build your team and be like very specific. Like, I'm gonna have a
yeah,
senior developer come, and then I'm
yeah,
gonna hire this other guy who's gonna work, and then
yeah,
they need to work together, and I will tell them
yeah.
what I need, and da 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 da. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's much easier that way. And with developers again, it's just you just you have to be upfront with them. Just be direct. Tell them what you want.
Mm.
And if they don't want to do it, I mean, you can
Yeah,
always find another co-founder, right? And I've done it. I used to be afraid of it. Like at one point, I'm like, oh my gosh, my co-founder's leaving.
mm.
Then and then it kept happening. Like my CFO left, my CTO left, the next CTO left, the next developer on the team seen that the CTO left, and then he left too. And I
Yeah.
started panicking, and then and then I finally realized I could just go find another one, and then now
Mm.
I don't have a problem with finding developers anymore.
Yeah, no, I can totally hear that. So
Yeah.
I'm pulling up on my screen now the lean stack. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to pull it off just a second because I want to go into that in a little bit more detail in a second.
Mhm.
But I want to ask from you, and for what you're working on, what do you feel like the very next thing you need to do for food supply is? What is your exact next step? I'm gonna get off of here with Lloyd
Mhm.
Jr. and I'm gonna go do this for my startup. What is that for you?
Honestly, it's just raising capital. Like this, we're done. Like this, my team is on me right now. They're very upset. Like they're like, "What are you doing? Like, why didn't you take the money?" Right?
Mm,
So, I just gonna probably launch a token and just get the capital we need because I really should have raised it a long time ago. And as time has passed, all it's done is just made things worse because people want to leave because they're like, yo, why is this not, going as
mm,
fast? Why are we not getting capital? Why is it not here? And I turned it down. I'm like, this is a good offer, but like, if we do the token, like, I will get complete control. I won't have to deal with it VC. I won't have to deal with Angel. I can just
mm.
launch a token. I can do it my way. Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
bother me, right? So that's kind of what it is.
Well, and that's why earlier I wanted to dive into what's going on with you in refusing a lot of these things. So if it's
Oh
being
yeah,
handed to you and you're
yeah,
refusing it, that's what we got to address because
yeah.
now in this 90-day startup accelerator, we got to address like where do you find that confidence to feel like, okay, I know, well, if here's plan A. I'm going to get it for this, 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 and this, and I have creative control. Plan B is I'm not going to have creative control, but I can lat move to somewhere else because I'm going to make enough money to start
Yeah,
my next business. You see what I'm
yeah.
trying to say? Where do you feel your comfort will lie? Where's that for you?
Well, like I've done this long enough where I've been able to drastically reduce the cost of me developing a business.
Okay.
So before it would take me like maybe 6 months to a year, and now it takes me like 2 weeks, 3 months.
Wow.
2 weeks to like 3 months. And because of that, I mean, I'm a little bit more picky, and I've got screwed over by VCs too many times to count. So I just lose my mind at with them right now. Even just investors in general.
Mm,
I just the whole investor concept. Since crypto came along, it just doesn't really make sense. It just makes sense to me to make a token, and
mm,
I've kind of been avoiding that because like when you launch a token, it's public, right?
mm.
And I kind of wanted to. Well, I guess I'm not in stealth mode anymore, but I'd like being in stealth mode, right?
Uh,
And I can just build, and I don't have to worry about marketing. I can just build a product and focus on that. Because like when you launch now, you have to worry about branding. Um, you know, a lot of stuff you got to worry about, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's kind of my reasons, I guess.
So that's which is going to bring me
Yeah.
to our conversation here about lean time. And I kind of want to dive into this before we go, but if there are people who have questions or they have a comment online, I really want to thank Sabina for being so vocal about the things that she sees. Daryl says congratulations on becoming a part of the Founders of Color launch program as well. Thanks, Daryl, for being on. So the other thing I wanted to point out is I'm going to give people a sneak peek of what you're experiencing within the lean stack and what's kind of here. And those people who are a part of the accelerator right now are starting at about season 3, demand validation. And so when we look at that demand validation, there's a series of courses that are here, and I'll just kind of show you these quickly. In demand validation, there are 14 courses. On the side, it tells you how long the course is, and you can go through them in order. And so they're all readable courses. So it tells you it takes about 12 minutes to read it. So we'll click on it. Let's go see what the course looks like. And then here we have the information regarding just reading through. These are what these courses are. You taking your time, going through, reading where you're going to be, the typical 90-day cycle, all of what you're going to look at: acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral, prioritization, mindset. All of these things are covered in this simple, readable format. So, as it's covered in this simple, readable format, you can go in and workshop it throughout this process to find the things that you want to add in and tweak into your startup business plan. So when we think about a business plan, and my father explains this on previous episodes of the show, he's like, business plan is the traditional model of business where we're going to create a business plan, then we can get some money from investors, and then we have some capital to start our business. That's the old way. Startups now are coming in and saying, we are going to make an idea that is sellable, and we don't necessarily have to raise that initial loan from a bank in order to do that. So in the startup world, we're already somewhat decentralized from that plan. But as we go forward, we have to know that we get all these little details in. So as we see here, we're starting with season 3 for our accelerator participants to walk through each of these. This all to read through all of season 3 will be about 3 hours in total if you just read it all the way through. But if you take it in chunks over each week, it'll give you a chance to really meditate on that and see how you can add that work into your own startup. By the time you're done with this accelerator program, there are 6 seasons. So you're going to get all the way down to growth acceleration, value delivery. And you have to get all of those details, like you were talking about earlier, Mario. You have to get all of those details in before we can have a minimum viable product that you know will make money, that you know is going to be sellable and marketable, that you know is going to add value to your startup. And when you have that minimum viable product, it really is going to feel more like a paring down than it will feel like a building up. Because when we can distill your idea down to something that's workable and that is validated and that you know will work, and like for example, in other avenues that you've seen examples of them working, then that's when investors are venture capitalists or other accelerator programs will be excited about investing in what you're doing, or maybe even buying your product ultimately when they can see that. But there's a lot of steps along the way. And we don't want at Kukua Institute and Startup on the Blocks, we don't want you all to feel like, oh, there's so many steps, so I just shouldn't do it. We want you to take it step by step, one day at a time, one lesson at a time, to see what you can take out of that and apply to your business. Now, it sounds like based on this conversation that we've had today, that Sabina is very lucky to be working with you all, and you'll have a very similar focus because she too is about food, and I think that's going to be really great to see as you all go throughout this as a team go throughout the accelerator program. But I also want to encourage you as you keep walking through, take those little tidbits, there might be just one of all of those lessons. There might be just that one lesson that gives you the confidence that you need to say, you know what, I'm going back to US8 and I'm going to get my money and I'm going to get or I'm not saying that that's something you want to do, but I'm just saying, like, if you know how to answer that specific question, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
get where you want to be, to give you that confidence. Because I think once you build those structures and you feel like you have a sturdy foundation and a good practice of what you want to do, then you'll feel confident to say, you know what, I'm going to let them connect with this. And I'm going to let them work with this, or I know exactly what I want to do. Now, I also know that you're looking for some also legal help. And you're kind of in a unique situation because unlike a lot of our cohort members, you are not in the United States. You alluded that you're in Toronto. So finding that help that can
Yep.
help you create your startup in Canada, or your startup in one of the Saharan African countries, to work with that. What is your plan for that?
I honestly just thought about finding one in one of the countries, like Sierra Leone. I just thought about finding one there.
So
And
you want to start a company in Africa as opposed to in a country in Africa as opposed to into the United States, or having it start in Canada? What is your idea with that?
well, ideally, I want to start in like Canada or USA.
Okay.
I think that would probably be a good idea because there's a lot of benefits um, that the government provides for us. Like we could like bring people here, and I think it would motivate like a lot of our co-founders and team if if they could do that. Um, and it kind of just creates like I guess like a connection where like the people on the team, even the customers from Africa, actually will have like a pipeline directly to Canada,
Hmm.
which probably most of them never had before.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of them they actually want to work with like the Canadian American government.
Well, and I think that also might be one of your goals in this 90-day accelerator right now, is maybe that might be the thing you're trying to find out is, should I just open up a company in the United States because I know everyone's going to want to trade there, or should I do Canada and kind of soft trade, or
Yeah.
how I want to do that? That's a question that needs to be validated,
Hmm.
within that. So maybe that'll give you one step of confidence there. Because if you can have a clear plan about how you're going to do that, I think people are going to, I think they're going to definitely respond to that. And I think people will be excited about that because they can see an active plan for success. I posted
Hmm.
Sabina's comment there saying she's excited to work with you.
Hey.
And so I can't wait. And hopefully you all get a chance to meet maybe in another week, coming on to Startup on the Blocks in the networking.
Hmm.
But I'm going to give you the floor for maybe some parting words, some words of encouragement to some of the other founders that are in the audience that are watching today. What is something that you would give them based on your history and background with your startups that you would encourage them with today?
I guess just follow the process. Like this is accelerator, and you got to trust in the process because
Mhm.
the process has been tried and tested. You try to go around the process, it's there for a reason, and it's a jungle out there. Okay,
Mhm.
you need to understand that it's a jungle out there. Uh, you know, right now, I guess most people, most of us in here are, it's our first time doing this, and it seems daunting. But I mean, I've done this enough times now, so you know, it's still daunting, but it just gets easier, right? And you just learn so much, and you really learn the importance of just following structure to develop your business as opposed to not having structure or doing it yourself. When I was doing it myself and I didn't have any structure, I didn't learn from an accelerator. I was shooting in the dark, and it was good because it helped a lot. But you want to do other stuff. It's 24 hours in a day. You need to spend your time doing something else, right? You don't need to be shooting in the dark when you've gotten into an accelerated program, right?
Yeah. So we look forward to seeing you and Sabina's team as one of the 10 teams in our accelerator 90-day process. We'll keep checking in with you throughout the time to make sure that you're devoting that time to developing your startup. But that's going to be the same across the board for the accelerator participants and the Founders of Color program. Is we want to make sure that you take that time, even if it's an hour a day, even if it's a little bit of time where I'm just going to read this, let it just marinate while I'm driving to run some errands or something like that. Let it do what it needs to do. But all the time you're building, every step forward, building to make sure that you're getting what you need out of the program. Mario, I want to thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody out there for your questions and comments, and congratulations. And tune in next Thursday and every Thursday from 6 to 8, 6 to 7 on Central Time. We have our networking on the Hopin platform. You just need to register. And then from 7 to 8 Central Time, you can come on and see our show, Best Practices with Startup on the Blocks. Okay. Thank you again, everyone, for coming out today. My name is Lloyd Richard Jr., Mario McLaughlin, and you all have a wonderful, wonderful week.